I'm Jackie Cohen-Roth, founder and CEO of Cannabis MD, CBMD for shorthand. Cannabis MD is a robust platform, including the website that you're watching this on now, or maybe you're looking at us on YouTube. But in any event, Cannabis MD is again a robust platform that supports emerging medical cannabis markets, whether they be in the U.S. Or internationally. We have upcoming our Cannabis Science and Therapeutics Forum, which is focused on filling the void on physician and healthcare provider education about medical cannabis science and therapeutics. Today, I am very excited to host on the Cannabis MD video profile, Dr. Rachel Knox, who is the keynote speaker of the Cannabis MD, Cannabis Science and Therapeutics Forum, which will be held as a virtual conference on October 3rd. We'll have information on that at the end of this video. I'm delighted again to be joined by Dr. Rachel Knox. She is again the keynote at the forum. Dr. Knox and I first connected thanks to a mutual friend and colleague in the cannabis industry, Fleecy Hubbard. And I think we first started talking back in maybe January, I think. Was that right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, and then COVID has changed all of our worlds. But anyway, here we are today. So there is so much that Dr. Knox is doing in the medical cannabis industry, supporting physician education and patients, as well as some really incredible work on ensuring health equity. She received her medical and business degrees from Tufts University after completing her undergraduate studies at Duke University. She trained in family and integrative medicine before pursuing additional study in the area of functional medicine, cannabinoid medicine, and endocannabinology. Which is the study of, well, I'm actually not going to go there. I'm going to let you speak to what you do. You do it best. And yeah, we share a passion for educating physicians and about the effectiveness of cannabinoid medicine and the evidence-based clinical integration of endocannabinology with cannabinology. And this is a blend of pharmacology of cannabinoids, and then as well as, and this is one, Dr. Knox, and we're going to have you weigh in on cannabimimetics. Did I get it?
You got it. Those are all mouthfuls. I know. We know.
Dr. Knox is chair of the Oregon Cannabis Commission, a member of Portland's Cannabis Policy Oversight Team, board member of Doctors for Cannabis Regulation, board member of Minority Cannabis Business Association, advisory board member of the American Academy of Cannabinoid Medicine, co-founder and president of the Cannabis Health Equity Movement, which is doing some really exciting things now during COVID, and a board member of the Nuleaf Project. Along with her family, she founded Doctors Knox, the American Cannabinoid Clinics, and Advent Academy. Together with her family, she's witnessed her patients safely use cannabis as an adjunctive therapy to their conventional treatment plans to wean off of prescription drugs and find relief from the many side effects. So what did I miss? There are so many things that you're doing.
You hit it all. I'm trying not to add more to that list.
Yeah.
I think we have enough. I certainly have enough on my plate.
You do. So if you would
all interconnected.
Yeah, well, they are clearly. And let's start off with cannabimimetics and what exactly that means.
All right. So cannabimimetics, it really is, when you think about the word, it really is what the word suggests. Cannabis mimicking, cannabimimetics.
Okay.
So cannabimimetics are non-cannabis or non-cannabinoid substances and practices that also modulate the endocannabinoid system. So, you know, a couple very high-level, simple examples of cannabimimetic substances are natural whole foods. Natural whole foods contain an array of phytochemicals that absolutely work on or around our endocannabinoid system, or endocannabinoid dome, which is a much broader perspective of around how the endocannabinoid system works. in relation to other neurotransmission systems and things like that. Herbs and spices, as well as essential oils. All of these categories of substances that we consume contain cannabinoid terpenes like beta-caryophyllene, which we know is a terpene, but binds directly to the CB2 receptor. And gosh, essential oils are probably the most abundantly rich in terpenes. Terpenes and terpenoids, again, interact with our endocannabinoid system, mostly indirectly, but also through other neurotransmitter networks that create what we're always talking about with respect to that entourage effect. So again, these are substances that aren't cannabinoids necessarily, but do enhance the pharmacological activity, right? The effects of cannabinoids in one respect, or supplement them or work similarly to them to get a desired outcome. Think about anxiety, for example. How many substances do we know that are out there on the market commercially, or that we've used as the basis of novel pharmaceutical drugs that calm anxiety, right? Those are phytochemicals like terpenes that are responsible for doing that. And it's because they work indirectly or directly in the endocannabinoid dome. Now, practices, on the other hand, cannabinoid practices are, again, very sort of conventional, normal activities like exercise, yoga, meditation, massage, acupuncture. But we even know deep breathing and grounding, going outside, or some people call it earthing, taking your shoes off. All of these things stimulate activity in the endocannabinoid system. As a matter of fact, it's massage and osteopathic manipulation have been studied and have shown that that activity increases anandamide, one of our endogenous cannabinoids. So it increases circulating anandamide about 165% above pre-treatment levels. Now, massage is not cannabis, but it stimulates the endocannabinoid system. So again, cannabimemetics are substances or practices that sometimes mimic cannabinoids, but really also modulate the endocannabinoid system in a similar way that cannabinoids do.
Well, you made a splash in April, I think it was 2019, with a TED Talk where you explained to the world what an endocannabinoid system is. And so, and just tremendous. And actually leading up to the forum, as we are encouraging everybody, it's a 20+ minute video that is just so informative. And so you refer to the dome. And so how does a dome relate to the system?
The cannabinoid dome. So what ongoing research has demonstrated to us is that the endocannabinoid system does not operate in a vacuum. And I think most people understand that, right? There are cannabinoid receptors on, I think, just about every single organ in our body. You know, that includes our vasculature, that includes the mitochondrial, cell membrane. These cannabinoid receptors are everywhere. Because
I was reading about bones today.
On bones. Exactly. Yeah. On immune cells. I mean, good golly. Yeah. They are everywhere, and they're everywhere because the endocannabinoid system's principal role is homeostasis, right? So homeostasis of the entire body means homeostasis between these silos, really, that we've created in modern medicine, right? We study the heart, we study the brain, right? And so we have subspecialties called cardiology and neurology, when really we're all treating the one human body. So the endocannabinoid system really very beautifully is reconnecting all of these subspecialties and demonstrating that, listen, when you're caring for the heart, you're really caring for the entire body, because guess what? Those practices and drugs that you use to treat heart-related conditions affect the rest of the body too, right? It affects that endocannabinoid system. However, the endocannabinoid system is involved in homeostasis across other neurotransmitter systems. And it's so intertwined that we're now calling it the endocannabinoid dome. It's like a kingdom. The function in and around the endocannabinoid system goes well beyond the CB1 and CB2 receptor, well beyond the couple of endogenous cannabinoids that we study and the enzymes that make those endogenous cannabinoids and break them down. It's a much bigger picture. and cannabinoids work on some of those other systems, right? They work on other receptors other than CB1 and CB2. So I think more and more we're going to be talking about the endocannabinoid dome. The endocannabinoid system was really phase one. Phase one to untapping the probably unlimited potential of our regulatory mechanisms in the human body.
Well, so that's a great segue into, actually, you now have jumped on to part 2 of educating about the endocannabinoid system, where I spoke at the beginning of our conversation about the void particularly in the clinical training, whether it be physicians and actually all healthcare professionals. So what do you have to say? What are, again, shifting from the system to now talking about a dome, but what is most of greatest urgency? Let's start there, where again, I was reading about bones today, and I'm in the graduate program of medical cannabis science, and we're focused on now toxicity. So we definitely, and we're going to be talking about this at the forum, of all the benefits of medical cannabis, and as an adjunctive therapy, and as a, maybe I'm misspeaking here, but a solo therapy, but
yeah, like a first-line therapy.
Yeah, first-line therapy. I'm sorry, I lost my, yeah. So, there's so many, I think I'm getting all gobbled up in my brain of all the questions that I want to ask you, but breaking it down. So we're missing, or physicians are missing this education, and nurses are missing this education in their clinical training. Actually, I was talking to some nursing students yesterday. So what should be that first line of attack on education? What do they need to know? We're hearing about drug interaction.
First, you need to know the endocannabinoid system, like point blank, period. Any medical related field, right? Our education begins with anatomy and physiology. I don't know one that leads day one with drug interactions. We learn that later, because first we have to have a fundamental understanding of the human body. So I know when I was in medical school, we started with anatomy and physiology. And once we understood anatomy and physiology, right, how the body functions, we went into pathophysiology, how the body functions under dysfunction or dysregulation. And we applied the pharmacology of drugs to that pathophysiology. You have to do it in that order. It's like building blocks. It's like spelling. You start with small words first, and then you start adding bigger words as you advance through your education, right? It is no different with cannabis. We're jumping to cannabis. As medical providers, we are experts in the care of the human body. We're not experts in a plant, right? We first need to become experts in the human body so that we can make sense of the pharmacology of cannabis. Can't do it out of order. And unfortunately, legalization happened to all of us. So people are using this plant, and it's sort of caused major discombobulation for all of us, right? And so we hyper-focused on being the cannabis doctor. No, you're a doctor of humans. You're not a cannabis doctor. So that's why we call ourselves endocannabinologists. And any cannabis doctor should really be pivoting in that direction. It is our job as medical providers to understand the function and dysfunction of the endocannabinoid system, right? We need to understand what a normally functioning system looks like, and then understand what a dysfunctional system looks like and how that manifests in a myriad of diseases, right? We know that clinical endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome includes things like fibromyalgia and migraine headaches, PTSD, right? Where we have a classical deficiency of an endogenous cannabinoid. Well, what if we have a hyperactive endocannabinoid system? So we need to know all of this stuff first, really, before we start applying cannabis practically. We have to understand what the CB1 receptor does in the eye, or the CB2 receptor in the eye, before, recommending cannabis for glaucoma. It is our job to have a command over the pathophysiology of the endocannabinoid system and a command over the pharmacology of cannabis, so that when we're sitting down with a patient, we can have an intelligent conversation with them and begin to apply the science of cannabis very accurately to the condition, right, that patient is seeing us to address. So that's number one. Again, we're missing the boat if we're just jumping right into cannabis and cannabis pharmacology and drug-drug interactions. Mm-hmm. Have to understand the human body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to that, actually, you were talking about the whether it's a hyperactive endocannabinoid system. Is that so? I recently had a conversation with Dr. Michelle Shuffett, who's a moderator of our clinical application, scientific application of medical cannabis. And so she's part of a study, some research that actually I think was sidelined because of COVID, but looking at the impact of somebody's metabolism and related to dosing. And so is this a connection with that hyperactive?
No, we all have different, we all metabolize yeah. everything at different rates. And if we want to zoom in like really acutely around the most studied cannabinoids, phytocannabinoids, THC and CBD, and there's many others, right? But let's just take those two as an example. A person might metabolize THC very quickly and CBD very slowly. Or a person might metabolize both very quickly, or a person might metabolize both very slowly. So I do think there already is a place for pharmacogenetics as it pertains to helping clinicians, right, in the decision-making process, prescribe certain drugs. And that really is also the case for cannabis. There's a reason why people are sensitive to THC or not, or are sensitive to CBD or not. And I do think it comes down to how quickly the body is metabolizing those cannabinoids. That is important. But when we're talking about ECS dysfunction and maybe a hyperactive system, we're talking about diseases wherein there might be a primary increase in cannabinoid receptor expression without a decrease in endogenous cannabinoids, right? If you have an aberrant decrease or deficiency in endogenous cannabinoids, we might call you endocannabinoid deficient. So, but you can have normal levels and still have an overexpression of cannabinoid receptors for whatever reason, and that is manifesting in a different disease process, for example. Cancer is a typical example of an overactive endocannabinoid system, where on cancer cells, you do see a significant upregulation in cannabinoid receptors. Mm-hmm. It's very nuanced though, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And actually, thank you for that example of cancer, because that was going to be a question is, how is this manifesting? And exactly. Yeah. Thank you for that. So, your sister Jessica is also Dr. Jessica Knox. It's a family of 4 of you. And I've been doing my research, of course, and speaking to you a lot and Jessica a bit, but you're talking about the generation of physicians that both of you are part of, where eager to include innovation in your practices. And then also your parents are physicians as well. They're again part of the Knox docs. What's the contrast, or is there a contrast that you're seeing, or maybe this is a better question to ask your parents, of their generation of clinical training versus you and your sister going through clinical training?
Well, unfortunately, only 13% of medical schools even mention endocannabinoid, the endocannabinoid system in their curriculum somewhere. That doesn't speak to like truly integrated ECS training. I don't think anybody's done it yet. And I can tell you, my sister and I did not get any education in the endocannabinoid system, let alone the endocannabinoid dome. Let alone cannabis as medicine, right? So even when we came through, we graduated from Tufts in 2012, over 20 years after the endocannabinoid system was discovered and didn't get it. That should really tell us the degree of the problem that is the elimination. And at this point, I would call them the elimination, right, of endocannabinology. Like, sorry, if cannabis was not the vehicle used to uncover the endocannabinoid system, I think this would have been the medical miracle and breakthrough of the modern era. I do. And the endocannabinoid system would have been taught everywhere. It would have infiltrated every subspecialty training. I mean, gosh, it's really sad. But I can tell you,
they got left out. I mean, it's just me, and that the majority of Americans would like access to it, whether it be for themselves, family members. We have 33 states have medical programs. 11 states have adult use recreational programs, and it's like, are the heads in the sand? I don't understand it. And patients are asking their physicians. I dabble just a bit in drug-drug interaction. Well,
this is the thing. Like I said before, legalization happened to us. Now we have to play catch up because the powers that be prevented research, right? They did not allow our universities in this country to study cannabis holistically. And really, I think we medical providers need to hold the right parties accountable to that. One, the endocannabinoid system is normal physiology, right? I know it wasn't discovered until the late 80s, early 90s, right? By 95, we had all the core components sort of understood. But again, 20 years later, you're still not teaching medical students the endocannabinoid system, which is the most foundational physiological system in this human body.
I mean, I've heard
I think that's ethically wrong, right? That's where we're at. People are using cannabis, a plant with phytochemicals that work directly on the endocannabinoid system. Whatever your bias or religious beliefs around cannabis, we medical providers need to be unbiased. We need to be impartial when it comes to the things that our patients are putting into their bodies, period. So I call it a due diligence. It is the due diligence of our education institutions, as well as ourselves, to know something about the endocannabinoid system, period. And the pharmacology of cannabis. We add that in there because people are using it. It is our job. If we want to, I mean, so many things, right? If we're here for our patients, right? If we want to claim that we care about the public health and safety of our patients and consumers using cannabis, well, we got to get in there. We got to get in there and understand the endocannabinoid system, understand the pharmacology of cannabis holistically. We cannot err on just focusing in, very narrow-mindedly on the harms when there is a whole host of benefits as well. Like, we have to have a holistic command over this space, or else we're failing ourselves and we're failing our patients.
Yeah, and that may be a great segue into the foundation of the cannabis health equity movement. And so this is an assurance of inclusion of cannabis as an opportunity to create intergenerational health. It's hitting all platforms, whether it be a full wellness and again to economy. So why don't you, and it's CHEM for short.
CHEM for short. So while it does stand for Cannabis Health Equity Movement, CHEM is also short for chemistry, and we like that because we can pay homage to our scientific and researching forefathers like Meshulam, who really helped get us to where we are today, right?
Dr. Raphael Meshulam.
Dr. Raphael Meshulam's isolation of CBD, THC, and CBG in 63 and 64 has really, decades later, but has catapulted us to where we are today. And so we have to be grateful for that. At any rate, with CHEM, we understand and we believe that cannabis, through all its utility, right, through its policy reform, through its taxation and use of funds, as well as its tens of thousands and counting unique innovations. And those innovations, they span the gamut from agriculture to industry to nutrition and medicine. right? We really see cannabis as the tool that we can leverage in all of those ways to create pathways of total health equity. Total equity or health equity, we call it health equity because we understand that, you know, health, for better or worse, right, as a surrogate of well-being, is dependent upon the health of the communities within which we live, right? And so through those innovations, right, cleaning the soil with hemp as a rotation crop, for example, that produces more nutritious foods, or processing the polymer of hemp into plastics and glass, or even fuel, to fuel cars built with hemp steel, to energize homes built with hempcrete and hemp wood, right? You see where I'm going here? In eating and using cannabis medicinally, right? In one genus of plant, we have endless opportunity to, one, create economic opportunity, to create jobs for a lot of people. And again, right now, COVID and people talking about stimulus and everything, we can create a booming economy out of this one plant. But also with this one plant, we can solve for a lot of the gaps and holes and inefficiencies and problems that exist in our community infrastructure to create healthier ecosystems within which we all can thrive. I mean, that's how I see myself and really hopefully others playing a part in ensuring that cannabis in the industry that is being, you know, birthed, right, in real time out of cannabis serves that end. Like, that needs to be where we're going. Total equity or health equity for all people. And we can do it. It's just we need people to think that way too. Yeah. We need people to see this as the opportunity for massive change.
Massive change. I mean, we're still, you know, it's this uphill battle still against the stigma. So, I mean, I absolutely applaud what you're doing and you and your colleagues and these initiatives and exactly, I mean, whether it is somebody's wellness and a community's wellness, again, with the citizens and their literal physical wellness to you know, businesses. And you know, numbers just came actually related to that is numbers were announced in the last day or two of how strong Maryland's medical cannabis program is. So it's first became available to patients. So we're not even 3 years in. First became available to patients in December 2017. The revenue last year, 2019, was just over 100 million. Here we are the first couple of days into September, and it's announced it's $240 million. And so, yeah, wow. And
yeah, Oregon, the tax revenue alone this year is going to be over $130 million.
So then you have seen, well, in Oregon is, you know, a lot of things are going on in the country now, which is quite unsettling. So the tax dollars related that are actually being generated, not related, they're just absolutely
patient and consumer funds. Yeah.
Yeah. So where's it going? What do you see? What's been the impact?
Where's it going? So in Oregon, now Oregon legalized medical use back in '98, and we legalized 2015, and this preceded the equity movement, right? So, you know, Oregon doesn't have any funds being set aside for equity, and that's a problem, and we're trying to correct that. So currently, Oregon has what we call the 40-20-15-10-10-5 allocation. 40% goes to our Department of Education. The next 20% goes into a drug treatment and recovery fund. The next 15% goes to state police. The next two tens, so 10 and 10, goes to cities and counties who have opted in to allowing cannabis operators to work in those spaces. And then 5% goes to the Oregon Health Authority for drug treatment and recovery as well. What they missed cannabis research. They missed funding the medical patient program, and they missed equity. And research is so critically important. So for states to come online and not use any of that cannabis tax revenue to research the cannabis being grown in their state is just beyond me. I mean, talk about business 101. You use your revenue to make sure that the business is running appropriately. You want to measure, you want to monitor, you want to adapt, you know, and again, a lot of these states regulate to the tune of ensuring public safety. Well, I need you to put some of that money into studying the effects of cannabis on your consumers. It's just, again, it's beyond me.
Yeah.
So we're creating bills. You know, we're working with state representatives, et cetera, to write really the misguided course that we've taken here.
Yeah, in every state, you know, is learning from each other and how best to move forward. I mean, California.
Just keep on repeating the bad regulations. You'd have to say, oh man, again.
Yeah. Well, and so speaking of research, so what are you looking at? What are you particularly excited about? Let's start there.
Well, okay. That's a loaded question because really it is matter right now. We have so many catch-22s when it comes to researching cannabis.
Obviously, or not so obvious, but those in the industry and those that we know is that you're just handcuffs on as far as research. Every research paper I read ends with the discussion of more research is needed.
More research will always be needed. I mean, things that we believed in the 1950s are now haven't been debunked even, but at the time, you know, it was the status quo and it was respected and well understood. Like, we're never going to fully understand this body and the pharmacology of things. We're just not. I mean, there's how many FDA approved drugs exist that we can prescribe today, and we actually have no idea how they work in the body, right? It's crazy. But I can go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah,
I won't. Point is, we'll always need more research. Right now, for me, it's about what research are we prioritizing, right?
Right.
And the way I see it is that people are using cannabis now, so it's not likely that we can just do all this research around cannabis and its use in prescription diseases, right, before we can figure out how safe it is for the right people to use that for what condition and then control access, right? That's what we've seen with Epidiolex, right?
Yeah.
It's great that GW Pharmaceuticals was able to demonstrate efficacy, but people aren't waiting for that, right? And not only that, Epidiolex can only be used for specific conditions, or else you're using it off-label. We cannot wait to study every single disease and then determine who can access it for what. We don't have the time for that. People are using it in legal states. So, you know, my recommendation to states are to do a few things, and I've written them down. So I want to be very clear. We need holistic research, right? That makes sense pragmatically. So I think our research really should be focusing, and this should be on a state-by-state basis, on cannabis use and their effects on our communities and epidemiology, right? There are a lot of people out there quoting studies that have demonstrated that in states that have legalized medically, we see a reduction in opioid prescribing.
Right.
Or,
epidemic has not gone away while we've been in the midst of a pandemic. Yeah.
That's right. And in states that have legalized for specific conditions like anxiety or PTSD or chronic pain with opiates, really what we're seeing is a decline in this prescription of pharmaceutical drugs for those same conditions. What that tells us, or that suggests to us, is that people are choosing cannabis over pharmaceutical drugs. We need to study that. So these are my three priority areas for research on epidemiology and public health in states. One, this research should really be emphasizing monitoring and reporting public health outcomes of cannabis use, and again, holistically. We want to know what it's doing for the better and for the worse. This research is much needed to educate the public about the known risks, but also the known benefits of cannabis use. And then, yes, of course, we want research to help us navigate how to and why we should be protecting children and vulnerable populations from what we call accidental exposure. Because in states that have legalized medically, children are allowed to access cannabis as medicine too. So all this, we have to prevent kids from exposure is it's ridiculous. We don't want anybody to have accidental exposure, right?
When you say accidental exposure, so kids having access, so there are pediatric patients, but then there is that opportunity for toxicity where somebody leaves their edibles open. That they are packaged, that it's really challenging to get them open. Once they're open, and the genie's literally out of the bottle.
It is. You know what? We allowed adults to have alcohol in the homes. We allow adults to have heroin in the homes. At some point, we're going to have to hand over the keys to the car to these adults over 21 and have the expectation that they're going to use cannabis responsibly, right? But we need these sort of more broad, holistic, epidemiologic and public health research studies to demonstrate really how harmful or how beneficial is cannabis. I think, in Oregon, on the record, our legislators and regulators have said, oh, the sky hasn't fallen because of cannabis legalizations. And I think if we have more public health and epidemiological studies around cannabis and its common use, I do think that we'll start to assuage the fears of our politicians and our legislators and our regulators around cannabis, right? Unfortunately, this war on drugs has done a psychological number on a lot of us. And what has happened through fear-based regulation is an over-regulation of this industry.
Mm-hmm.
That is not good for this industry.
Yeah. And there's also
neither the medical nor the adult cases. It's, I think that it needs to be a lot more flexible than it is. And then place emphasis on information, on educating the public.
Truly. Right.
And not only the public, the gatekeepers to medicine.
Right.
Your medical providers, medical staff, first responders, emergency medicine, departments. Like we need to be better equipped with information. And we've been deprived of that education for decades. I mean, really a century, to our own detriment now. And we really need to learn from the mistakes of our past.
Yeah, that is leading to a great question on, as we're going into the forum and we're trying to, build through grassroots efforts of letting folks that how critical it is that they have awareness of cannabis, that their patients are using medical cannabis, their patients want to use medical cannabis. And again, it's not a panacea. My head almost blew off the other night. I was having dinner with very conservative neighbors, and there was a side remark where his wife was sitting next to me and said, oh, my cousin has her mother on CBD and she's watching it because when she doesn't take it, she starts to hurt again. And it's just, I just put my hands underneath my seat and just didn't say anything other than, well, I hope that your cousin is getting cannabis, the CBD's been tested, and trying to raise awareness while the husband was just really judgmental and making snarky remarks about that it can fix everything. Well, it cannot. That's part of the education, but more specifically to our healthcare providers. Are there, with physicians, who are the primary practice types and specialists that should be paying attention?
Primary care, right? Because of the sheer breadth of the number of patients primary care providers see, right? So that's our internal medicine, family medicine, and pediatrics, emergency medicine, right? Those are front lines. So think frontline medical providers, and then absolutely any medical provider overseeing a condition on a qualifying condition list. If PTSD and anxiety are on your qualifying condition list, well, then psychiatrists need to understand the endocannabinoid system and cannabis pharmacology, because lo and behold, you'll probably witness your patients, right? Experience your patients asking you about cannabis for those conditions. Seizures. If seizures are on a qualifying condition list, neurologists need to know something about endocannabinoids and the pharmacology of cannabis. Cancer, so that means oncologists. The list goes on. You know, I think everybody, at the end, right, everybody should be competent to a degree, because guess what? People are using it, whether it's CBD through, you know, through hemp, right, the unregulated hemp market, or THC through the regulated adult and medical markets. Like, if people are using it, we all have to be prepared to have intelligent conversations with our patients. The last thing we should be doing is disparaging our patients because of their free choice to use cannabis as medicine.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and that's where the bias comes in. Oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. So with the void in the education of within the clinical training itself, so then we look to continuing medical education. You have co-founded with your family Advent Academy, and then that is, so if you would,
1.0, 2.0 is coming.
That is exciting. So, but with the education, you're talking about which physicians should know. And there is, across the country, there is not uniformity on on the education, if a physician should want to become a recommending physician. So it's anywhere from 0 continuing medical education to 2.0.
Like we have 0.
Yeah. And then Advent, your course is 5. So
yeah, we started with 5. We launched with 5. So more to come. And when it comes to continuing education, like usually these credits are certified by an agency, right? An accredited agency, and it lasts for 1 to 2 years, right? And so it's great that we can afford continuing education units to our medical providers, right? To maybe incentivize us to learn a thing or two. But the downside is that information around cannabis and its research is changing almost overnight. Yeah. And because you only have to renew continuing education credits every 1 to 2 years, that information can become very static. So unfortunately, some of our existing continuing education credits assigned to certain programs is outdated already. And that's okay, especially when that education is pertaining to what we believe is not going to be changing that much here and in the near future, which is the foundational components of the endocannabinoid system, the disease processes that we're recognizing as true clinical endocannabinoid deficiencies, the pharmacology of cannabis, right? There are some things that are static, and they can be static. But like I said, research is changing overnight. It's changing the way we see cannabis in the pharmacology almost overnight. And so we want to be able to stay relatively up to date. So we do have our Foundations of Cannabinoid Medicine that offer 5 continuing education units, but we also have Cannabis Grand Rounds right now, which is a monthly webinar on a current event, really. Current events we'll also go over the latest research, a number of things, but the point is to have some education that you can rely on being up to date. And that's what this space is really about. Like, somebody has to keep a thumb on the pulse, because it's ever changing. I mean, from regulations to the science, and we medical providers need to stay as up to date on this as is possible, because what has happened until now is that the public has been educating us on cannabis. But they still come to us wanting us to help them navigate this rapidly changing place. We have to be the ones that have the better command over the science at the end of the day. Right? Our patients are trusting us too, to have that command.
Yeah, and the patients are coming in and asking, and so that's why we're doing this. So I want to thank you for your time today, generosity. We're just under a month out from the forum. We were excited to have you join us on the East Coast, but now we're national, and we'll be able to engage with folks across the country. So we will.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll be back on October 3rd with the Cannabis Science and Therapeutics Provider Education Forum. So thank you so much, Dr. Knox, and have a great rest of your day.
See you then.